this early.
Okay.
Yeah, all right, so we got it before.
Welcome everyone to Senate Education Tuesday, April 30th, 2024. We've talked a little bit about section 1 of the yield bill. And St. James provided us with a walkthrough of it, which was very helpful. And what I thought we could do while we have Ms. St. James for about 25 minutes is maybe to start the conversation by asking everybody, I know it's a broad question, but it's talking about Commission on the Future of Public Education. Brainstorm for a moment what people on this committee would like to see this commission do. Rather than getting too married to this work, just broadly, what do people in this committee, given this possible opportunity for the Commission on the Future of Public Education to meet over, I think they're talking a 1.5 year period. What do people want to see happen or that kind of thing? Look at, etc. I'll take notes and please.
So I think there's two simultaneous efforts to create visions. One is the Secretary of Education and the governor. And the other is potentially this piece here, which I believe really is kind of legislature driven. And my concept is that both these visions come together, we create that. To me, that's the goal. And I think all of the good staffing and good conversation that went into this bill over the past month or so has been very productive. And it contains everything in it that I think it should contain and the caveat of anything else that applies. So I knew that's it. Two visions coming together and we create one and then we move forward. So I think it's a good job. I support it, and I'm not going to comment on the yield part of it.
Yeah.
Because I think the commission is, for us, the primary interest.
So, do you feel as though this represents what you just mentioned, that sort of coming together of the administration and legislature?
Well, I think inevitably it will.
It will.
We create legislation,
Yeah.
governor's going to, and Secretary of Education's going to put on the table, as they always do with various legislation, counter proposals, tweaks, and in the end, we'll vote on and live by a common vision as synergistic as possible.
Senator Shane, please.
Thank you. I think my point is captured on page 7, section B, subsection B, regarding just how the system looks and the size of the system. You know, like the constituent, I talked to a constituent yesterday who, you know, is very supportive of education in general, but, you know, the town of Brattleboro has several elementary schools. It's a town of, I think, just over 12,000 people. Several elementary schools around the town, different areas, not a huge town. And, you know, this is just an example, but are that many schools spread out? Is that the right way to go about things? And then, you know, I think about classroom sizes in that regard, you know, teachers and there's, yeah, I'll just leave it at that. But I think this is an important area to focus on. And also education delivery to rural areas, which is going to be challenging. I'm thinking of the small schools with, you know, a dozen students, and, you know, it's a catch. I don't know if catch-22 is the right word, but, you know, people want their small community schools in their rural areas, and I don't fault them for wanting that. But then there are the questions of, are the kids getting an adequate amount of education? Or do they have access to classes that they want to pursue? But then again, if those schools close, are they facing an hour-long drive every morning and afternoon to go to another school and then go back home? So I don't have the answer, but it would be great if the steering committee could figure it out.
So for you, the footprint is really important.
But yeah, footprint and
School
rural
size.
education as well.
Okay. And Ms. St. James, Does that all feel like it's in there?
Yes,
Okay.
so this requires an analysis of the current number and location of school buildings, school districts, SUs, and whether consolidation is needed. I think that's, I think that is a broad topic that would sweep in everything that Senator Hashim just said, but as with anything.
Yep.
If you want a very specific recommendation,
Mm-hmm.
I would encourage you to be specific in your request. So if you don't think this language is specific enough, we can make changes, but I would say generally speaking, yes, I think it sweeps all of that in.
Senator Weeks.
I just wanted to comment that I'm pleased that, the bill references the upcoming school construction working group. But at the same time, I'm wondering if the charge we're giving the commission is so onerous that it's going to cause them to waffle or not be as productive as we intend. And specifically, I'll go back and reference whatever 30 education funding reports or research reports over the past 20 years. And wonder if this group is going to be able to tackle that issue and every other issue regarding the vision that others have been unsuccessful to accomplish. That's my only hesitation, but I'm 100% behind the goal.
Yeah.
I just wonder if we're giving them like, they're gonna be dealing with every problem with school education and the end product will not be quite as thorough as we hope, but I would like to defer to giving them the option to give them the opportunity to commission the opportunity to take this project and run it.
Another idea, I'm not sure, I didn't see it in the bill yet. The connection between, high schools and colleges in Vermont, I'm thinking about. Access to different courses, if a student wants to take some pre-college courses, or even just a high school course that's not available or is filled up in the high school, is there more room for collaboration between colleges and high school students? And I know that type of work is happening to some extent, but if there's a way to expand on it, if it's feasible, I think that's something.
St. James, does it point to anything in there about that kind of collaboration?
Not specifically, however, the commission is required to seek input from the president of UVM, the chancellors of Vermont State Colleges. And just generally speaking, one of the questions on page 8 is how public education in Vermont should be delivered, which again, extremely broad. But could potentially sweep in that topic, but no, there's nothing in here specifically about like dual enrollment or early college.
You may give us some language related to that so that this commission does look at that kind of collaboration. I mean, I do look at. It would be interesting, and I know we had people in here last year, the year before that. And we know we have Ms. Koenig here, if there are schools near the university, near colleges, what is their role? I know you're all involved in some way with local schools. But that kind of collaboration could make a big difference.
So when you left the room,
Yeah.
I was saying that we have some federal funding for the community schools. That we received from Senator Sanders' office, the grant, that will be helping us work on that. The other thing is that the schools surrounding us are places where we place student teachers and interns, so. We're constantly, the College of Education and Social Services is constantly working with those local schools for pathways for what we're doing with that.
I think Senator Hashim brings up a really good point. I even look at Bennington, what is happening? Are there ways for this group to reach out, start to help build conversations. We have a teacher shortage. We have people learning, we have people also from all over the world coming to these colleges and universities. How can we get them into classrooms? Give students more diverse experiences, language experiences, things like that. Thank you.
I was gonna reiterate, I think what you just pointed to, which is, I would love to see more collaboration between colleges and schools in terms of encouraging and maybe giving some financial incentives to students becoming teachers. I mean, I've been talking about that for a long time. Just especially in our community, teachers of color, we really would love to have them stay in our district and work in our district, and yeah, be great. So I mean, if that can somehow be tied into the language of in collaboration, that would be.
There is, I've made a note of collaborating for the kind of programmatic access, but there is already a provision that states an analysis of the capacity and ability to staff all public schools with a qualified workforce.
What page is that?
Page 7, lines 15 through 17. Does that suffice, or would you like more language or different language?
Also, the capacity building this year.
It doesn't really point to collaborating with our colleges, so. Unless you think that's,
Could you add something that says including looking at this by collaborating with our, colleges and universities in the state? So before we kind of sort of walk through this again on our own, maybe a little help from the same names, any other big picture things people are looking for in this? I mean, we'll get to things like, we'll probably through the first 5 or 6 pages today, we'll look at, who's on it, all that stuff, but any other big picture things that people are interested in making sure is here? Yes.
Page 5, public engagement. I'm thinking with the, public sentiment right now towards people making policy for our education in the state. Talks about Act 46, talks about Act 1.7. Maybe we ought to just let people know somehow that we're doing this before we just do it. Pass it in the law. I think people might want to be involved in it, and there's no real public until we, after we do, we pass judgment and decide how we're gonna do it. You may want to just let them know it's kind of a public announcement that they're doing. I know there's a lot of rumors around that there's gonna be mergers out there because of diminishing student population and, the inability to pass budgets. That kind of tips it on its ear. Just to think, I want to just get people thinking.
And I think it's great that they have commission shall conduct no fewer than 10 meetings to inform the work. That's good. It says at least half of the public meetings shall be held in different geographic regions of the state. St. James, do you recall why not all? The difference of have them all in different regions?
I think just the onerousness of having 10 meetings is a policy choice, but I think it was logistical.
So if I'm reading this, so at least half of the public meetings shall be held in different geographic region of the state. What does that what's that mean exactly?
So I think
Of the 5?
I think what was meant here, and if you agree that that should be what this language stands for, I would suggest some edits to it. I think what is meant here is that at least half of the meetings need to be held in a different place. So the first meeting in place A, the second meeting in place B, the third meeting in place C, fourth meeting in place D, and then fifth meeting in place E, or 1, 6, 7, 8,
Mhm.
and then 5 meetings can be wherever they want. the commission can meet for more than 10 meetings,
Mhm.
but at least 5 have to be held somewhere other than Montpelier.
And for me, Southern Vermont just does not get many of these meetings. And I'm afraid that we get 5, we get 1 or 2, maybe 1, and then everybody else would say, well, we'll few the last 5 at the State House. So it's up to the committee, but I would prefer that the public meetings shall be held in different geographic regions of the state. Please.
So, all of their meetings are going to be public.
Right.
So I would just encourage the
Oh.
committee to be really clear. Right? So this is a public body,
Yeah,
so all of their meetings are going to be public.
yeah.
So if you want language other than what is here,
Mhm.
I would just be really intentional about how many of the total meetings need to be held somewhere other than the usual place.
Because there are 24 people, right, on this commission.
I haven't counted.
Right, but
Yeah.
roughly,
Mhm,
and they would all have to travel.
correct.
And we'll get to that. Senators will determine whether or not 24 is too many or too few, but. Yeah. I just love to see people get to all corners of the state for at least the public meetings. Senator Sheen.
Yeah, I think, I'd also like to see that, but I also wanna make sure that people know about it, and I think this actually goes to Senator Williams' point, maybe earlier, but you know, if folks are going to travel 2 hours to Bennington or Wyndham County, just wanna make sure that people in that surrounding area are aware of the meeting. That way you're not having this whole group come down. No one knows there's a meeting going on. They meet, then they leave, and then people find out a week later, and I mean. Yeah, so. Advertising.
Yeah, please.
Can I point you to page 9,
Yeah,
line
great.
20? So the commission is required to honor before September 15th of this year, give to you all a formal written work plan, which has to include a communication plan to maximize public engagement.
That works then, thanks. Yeah, I remember the Act 250 Commission, we would get big turnout for that. And, so they'd be coming back this September. Who would they be giving that public engagement to? Because we won't be here.
You have lots of reports due when you are not in session,
Yeah.
right? So it's coming to the legislature, it will be processed, as any report is processed and
Yeah.
posted on your website. And let's see. You know, there are current members of the General Assembly on the commission.
Yeah.
But this report would be handled in any other way that a report that is due when you are not in session is handled. And so if you all get back on January 3rd or 4th and you read this and you don't like the communication plan, you can certainly pass some quick legislation to, you know, direct the commission to do something differently. But this would be no different than, any other report that's due when you are not in session, but it would also be publicly available on the legislature's website for anyone who's interested in this work, just to see as well.
How do you feel about that? It's bad. I'm just tired and see the session, please, go ahead.
Did we answer the question about geographic distribution? Thank you.
No, I think I flagged it for now. How many, Senator Sheen, again, your thoughts about the geographic distribution with 10 meetings?
Yeah, 1 second.
I think your concern might have been 24 people traveling around.
Well, I think goes back to the Act 250, that's what I was thinking of, is that we should have some kind of public service announcement, that we're doing this. You know, look at it through the lens if we run out there right now with 33 schools having passed their schools on people's temperature. We just need to let them know that we're talking about changing education, maybe forever in the state of Vermont. This is a concept.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I think if there's a way we can raise the language to ensure that different regions are going to be visited rather than, you know, stepping out of Montpelier and going down to Barry and then, you know, having all the meetings. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, different areas have different needs, and so, yeah, I don't know what the language looks like, but
I mean, it's a big deal. I just hate to see us shortchange ourselves by saying 10 meetings and the whole big 5 of them are here. That's my worry, like Montpelier and the other 5. What we did, I think, for the Act 250 is we had one in every county.
Yes.
That's 14 meetings, and that's a lot. But I would think that if every county would at least give people access to have a community meeting about education.
I think that's 14 meetings, I think,
14 meetings.
one in each county.
One in each county, it allows people access. Nobody can say, you know, had to drive really far, we couldn't go, but this is the future of public education.
Yeah.
I would say even having this group see every county isn't a bad idea, you know, so they can really drive in and say, all right, they feel it, experience it. Okay, St. James, do you mind making that?
Yeah, I'd just like to submit that experience from the school construction task force was the best meetings were the meetings which were held together as a group in a location of interest and not on Zoom. And that precipitated the somewhat the inclusion of the local schools specifically, but also some others who came in from the community. But those were the most beneficial meetings.
When you had the community conversation.
When we were out in the community,
Yeah,
they were to some degree invited to observe, participate, but off of the Zoom format and out into a school that had some relevancy to the conversation. It's very, those are the best meetings.
Okay, the timing too, how many legislators are gonna be on here?
yeah, we'll sort of go page by page.
Right, because after,
Yeah.
September 15th, well, we're still gonna be in, you know, senators and. But after November 5th, we won't, so,
Well, you get to stay that way until.
Yeah.
Somebody else is sworn in or you're sworn in again.
just for continuity.
Yeah, please,
Different topic.
yeah,
I don't want to dodge off that topic. I think the commission's too heavy. It's too many people. And the reason why I say that is, you know, maybe if we had 24 unique subject matter experts, it would be a great idea. But we're doubling up, tripling up, and I don't know why we're doing that. That rationale hasn't been explained. So, for example, we only have one AOE employee, hopefully it's Secretary of Education. But we've got 3 superintendents, 2 NEAs, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not sure, I haven't heard any logic for that yet. So I hope we can at least take a moment that, you know, we actually look at that and we either agree or disagree and move forward.
Right.
But I think it's a very heavy commission.
let's take a look before you leave, let's take a look right now at the membership of the commission. Starts at the bottom of page 1.
Before we do that, can we go
Please.
back to the meetings?
Yes, please.
So this group, the
Yeah.
commission itself,
Yeah.
have subcommittees.
Mhm.
They're budgeted. And they're per diem. They are allowed to seek reimbursement
Mhm.
or per diem expenses for up to 30 meetings.
Right.
Do you want those 14 meetings in each county to be meetings of the whole commission? Or do you
Oh.
want subcommittees to count?
So I can just tell people what we did with the Act 250 is we all didn't always show up. We usually everybody showed up to a certain number. And so instead of having 24 people. I mean, ours was very small. I think there were maybe 7 people. I think the subcommittees, not sure how it was organized, but maybe 3 people went. 24 people showing up does sound insane, but I love the idea of getting somebody on the commission to every county.
So you want those 14 meetings to include both meetings of the entire commission as well as subcommittees. Subcommittees, it could be either or.
Could be either of them. And we'll look at all this again, but if they, I just want them to have the option, if they don't wanna send 24 people, they could have 3 or 4, yes, energy.
I think, if we're talking about, let's say there's a subcommittee for rural education delivery. That subcommittee could be the one that meets in the Northeast Kingdom, for example, rather than sending 24 people. So I think that makes sense.
Okay, membership,
Okay.
okay, we're on page
Let's jump into
1,
membership today, okay, so page 1, small b,
we're gonna start on line 22.
Yep.
Secretary of Education or designee.
how does everybody feel about the Secretary of Education participating on there? Please.
So there was conversation, I think brought up by the Bees that they wanted to strike and I think they were unanimous in their representation that they wanted to strike designee.
Yeah.
I get it. I think this should be like a very powerful commission. And while I think that certainly want to drive for the Secretary of Education to be part, she will not be able to make probably all of these meetings, and a designee as a stand-in on occasion is certainly appropriate, but so I'm fundamentally agreeing with these,
Yeah.
but at the same time, Secretary of Education is not going to be able to attend 30 meetings. That's what.
Question about the definition of designee, is it a person who just is temporarily plugs in the way Senator Weeks is alluding to, or is it someone who actually takes the place of the Secretary of Ed in that role on the board?
I think it could be both absent specific direction.
Oh.
In either direction. I will just note, because I was not prepared to testify on this bill today. I have made at your direction some of the requests that the B's made. You just don't have that draft because I didn't know I'd be talking about it. There was, I believe, further follow-up from the B's that perhaps it's the Secretary of Education that they wanted to have with no designee option, but then the state board chair could have the designee option. I believe that was some follow-up feedback that we received. All your discretion.
I would just, if Senator Weeks's definition of what designee means, then I would like to keep it, because I think if the secretary can't make meeting, to send someone in her stead just seems to make sense.
Would you like me to add that back in?
Yeah.
I think so.
You have more experience with this than we do, designee, how would it get interpreted?
But I think, would you tell me again, Ms. St. James, how you're interpreting designee?
I am saying that absent specific direction. You all pass a bill that says Secretary of Education or designee, and then you go home. And then this commission is impaneled and they begin their work. I would say that word designee means if the secretary can't make it, he or she could send someone in their stead.
Anyone?
Or
Yeah.
they could actually designate a member of their staff to be the Secretary of Ed's designee for the work of the committee, right? So for example, my guess is that Jill Briggs Campbell will be often at the school construction meetings as the designee of AOE, right? But unless you give very specific direction, once you pass that language that just says or designee, they're gonna do with that language what they want.
Yeah. Ted, Oh, yeah, go ahead, Mr. Secretary.
Oh, no, I was just
Oh,
wondering, I like the word designate, I like to leave it at, but that's.
And so from a Office of Legislative Counsel perspective, is it a wording that kind of has the same effect that the primary attendee is the individual called out, the recognition of the fact that it's, life gets in the way and you can't make 100%.
Temporary designate.
I think you could add some language that says, on the occasion that the secretary is unable to attend, the secretary may designate someone to attend in his or her stead. However, if you don't qualify what unable to attend means, right? That could be any meeting.
sure.
I just want to ask, as a policy question, what's the goal for this development?
So the goal is to really look at what the future of public education should be in Vermont. And so
Uniformity across the board?
for all sorts of things, like when we were talking a little bit about, what does everyone, big picture, what do they want to see in it? People mentioned everything from physical footprint to outcomes and opportunities to career technical ed, all sorts of things.
So it's not gonna be a cookie cutter, every geographic area that we're representing is gonna be the same, but I would contend that we probably should have one representative from each district. For continuity, because I haven't seen all the school districts, I mean, I did because I traveled around the state for sports for my kids,
Yeah.
but nobody really appreciates what Burlington High School has and what they go through. If you're looking for continuity across the system, see problems and solutions. I'd like, and for 14 people to, from different school districts to be represented, could be difficult. But
Well noted. And I think there might be ways, we'll keep looking at membership and see if we're able to incorporate any of that, just again, the geographic diversity that you're talking about, so people do know. Can bring to the table, live in a rural district, my school has 10,000 kids, my school has 30 kids, all of that, yeah. So I think, please,
I can stick with you all for another 4 minutes and then I will need to leave.
great, we can go through
Even-
membership on
okay.
our own, yep, so thank you.
Okay.
But Secretary of Education or designate, let's keep it for now.
Chair of State Board of Education or designate, tax commissioner or designate. 3 current members of the House, not all from the same political party.
Mhm.
2 current members of the Senate, not all from the same political party. 2 representatives from the School Boards Association appointed by the VSBA director. 2 representatives from the Principals Association appointed by the VPA director. 3 superintendents appointed by the Executive Director of Superintendents Association. 2 of whom shall be appointed as follows. So 1 superintendent of an SU that operates a CTE center. And 1 superintendent of an SU composed of at least 3 separate school districts. 2 representatives from NEA appointed by the NEA Executive Director. 1 representative from the Vermont Association of School Business Officials with experience in school construction projects appointed by the president of ASBO. I'm on page 3 now. The chair of the Census-Based Funding Advisory Group. This did have board designee, and there was a recommendation by the Bs to remove the word designee there. The executive director of the Vermont Rural Education Collaborative. And then there was also an board designee there with a recommendation to remove that. And then 1 representative from the Independent Schools Association appointed by the president of ESA.
It's a big board. Big, yeah,
can we add on the designee, can we add designee with the authority to speak for the Secretary of Education? I mean, they gotta have some authority.
I think that's just inherent to
That's-
the definition of that.
Yeah, okay.
We have roughly 24 people. Generally, what do people feel about 24 people? And you say, James, thanks a million.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, I'll go back to the previous conversation. I'm not sure why we grew to 24 when we're having duplicated members from the same, representing the same perspective. And the only thing that jumps out at me is, potential, conspiracy theorists within me is that it creates a voting bloc, which is not necessary nor appropriate in this type of conversations. I think an easy initial paring down of the size is to have organizations with a body of one, just like AOE is a body of one. It's not,
Maybe voting on it.
well, that's.
Yeah, I would think, I mean, they would vote on the final product, they would vote on what's gonna go in. I very much act as a committee like this. I mean, at first blush for me, 24 is huge, but again, I think, my only experience with traveling around the state and being on this kind of commission, it was, 250, and I want to say like maybe 6 of us. It's maybe 7 at the most. Yeah,
Well, we also have to recognize there's a steering committee, which is really kind of theoretically, it's the leadership team of the commission, right?
Mhm.
It's the same, pulls from the same members that creates a leadership body.
Interesting.
To your point, I was thinking of the same thing too, actually, do we need,
3 members of the House.
I was actually gonna look, the legislators were gonna be my next point, but, for example, 2 members from the NEA, and, or all these different groups, is it necessary to pare things down? But then my other question is, do we have language that would either require or request that people have different backgrounds? Because, for example, a principal from Burlington is going to have a different perspective compared to a principal from Brattleboro. And when they're both on the same committee, contributing to this very large conversation, they may have disagreements. So I don't really have an answer. There are 2 sides to it, I think. But also, do we need this many legislators on?
Yeah, I just playing with this, I thought, well, 3 House members could be turned into 1, 2 senators could be turned into 1. I mean, I'm not sure what you get in terms of all that. If we give everybody 1 voice, it shrinks it down to 15. It's still a big commission, but a little bit.
What does the NEA need 2 members for?
Well, no, what we're saying is,
Yeah.
what if everybody were to get 1,
Or does it?
what does the committee think of that? Center Weeks.
Actually, I'll advocate for growing the committee.
Okay.
Therapeutic schools aren't represented, right? And that's not that that's a huge part of our landscape, education landscape, but it's a consideration. So I really don't want to grow the commission.
Yeah.
I think they are covered under 13.
I think so too. I think they're part of VISTA.
Okay.
And I think the other way to look at this is to, around the special ed and therapeutic schools, we can just make sure certain things are being considered in those areas. How does everybody feel about shrinking things down?
Yeah, I mean, there's still 2 sides to it, just, the fact that it's a huge and, I don't want to say unusual, but a unique undertaking.
Yeah.
So, when you shrink it down, you have more mobility and you can be a bit more nimble, but considering how huge this undertaking is, I can see the benefits in having different viewpoints, a lot of different viewpoints. And then also considering the fact that they have to physically go to all these different parts of the state, it could be easier to have more people on it. And then considering the subcommittees as well. Again, 2 different principals, we have 2 different backgrounds and bases of knowledge. 1 principal could be valuable on the rural subcommittee there as well, compared to the other principal for Burlington. So that's all to say, I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure. Yeah, Senator.
I would just say that given the subcommittees, I think we should leave it as is, because I have a feeling the subcommittees are gonna be doing a lot of the work and then like reporting back to the main committee. And the more folks you have that can splinter up and do the minutia, the better.
Well, I think one of the things we should ask Ms. St. James, I'm happy to ask her, is which group is doing is it the group that we just talked about? Are they doing the voting and deciding what's in the final report? Or is it the steering committee itself? And I'm guessing it's the group that we just talked about. And to Senator Weeks's point, we don't want anything to seem stacked. We want equal voices and make sure that everybody feels as though we've got an equal number of votes. Yeah, Senator Weeks.
Now, while Representative Collin may have offered some insights into why the committee was so large a month or so ago when it came through, maybe we could take a few moments of their testimony, House Ed, to explain why did they throw so many people on it, and why were there 2 from here and 3 from there, and only 1 from there, just to put our minds at rest. Maybe they'll share something with us. We're something thinking.
Or maybe have Peter come in tomorrow for just 10 minutes. And last time we had him in, we forgot what the question was. So it is tell us a little bit more about the size, tell us a little bit about some of your thoughts around that. I'm sure they struggled with the same issue. Okay, let's go down to then the steering group. So on the steering group, on or before July 1, 2024, the Speaker of the House shall appoint 2 members of the commission. The Committee on Committees shall appoint 2 members of the commission, and the governor shall appoint 2 members of the commission to serve as members of the steering group. No appointing authority shall appoint 2 members affiliated with the same organization. The steering group shall provide leadership to the commission. It shall work with the consultant to analyze the issues, challenges, and opportunities facing Vermont's public education system, as well as create a formal action plan to drive change and innovation in the public education system. The steering group may form 1 or more subcommittees of the commission to address key topics greater depth. Seems pretty well thought out to me. I like how it's asking the speaker, committee on committees, and the governor, taking from that group that we just went through and pulling together a steering committee. Now, there could be other ways to do it. People may prefer to have the steering committee vote, or the commission vote to make its own steering committee, but this seems pretty fair to me, no matter what size we end up having the commission.
Because again, you have more experiences than we do, but what for the steering group,
Yeah.
like what type of leadership would you anticipate would come out of that group of 5, out of a commission of 24? Have you seen an example in the past through the Act 250 efforts, but what's their role?
Process. I remember the Act 250 Commission, they had a steering committee that, they broke up into tables of 6. And then they, they had 1 moderator at each table. That kind of came back to the steering committee at each location, so. And it seemed like a good process. They really surfaced a lot of local issues that on Act 250, of course, but you're gonna have a lot of local issues on education too.
So what Senator Williams is referring to is when we would come to a community, we had a great facilitator, and that's key to this, I think, also. It wouldn't be as though the senators and the reps and everybody were separating everybody. The facilitator would say, I mean, we'd have 50, 60, 100 people sometimes. This is how we're gonna do it. This is how we're gonna do it in Rutland. This is how we're gonna do it in Bennington. And people would divide up, they'd ask questions, and they do it in a way to pull all this information together, which I'm glad.
And your local legislators were there.
And
they
people invited.
divvied them up among the tables so
Yeah.
that they were accountable too.
Yeah.
For the discussion.
it's a really good point to
Yeah.
make sure local legislators are included in this, at least notified that if all of a sudden somebody's going to your community, to your county.
Yep.
Come on by for this
So
conversation.
it's kind of a protocol, you know,
Yeah.
come in my area, like, I know you're here. First,
Everybody feel pretty good about this, or still go back to the other piece? Let's just do a little bit more before everybody. Like people are. Been a long day. Okay, so the steering group may form one or more subcommittees of the commission to address key topics in greater depth. Let's go through this. Collaboration and information review. So the committee shall seek input from and collaborate with key stakeholders as directed by the steering committee. At a minimum, the commission shall consult with Department of Mental Health, Department of Labor, President of University of Vermont. I think we do get rid of designate, but we can think about it. The chancellor of the state colleges. I mean, I'm not sure why you would consult anybody other than that person. A representative from pre-kindergarten education committee, the Office of Racial Equity, the representative expertise in community schools model in Vermont, the Vermont Youth Council. Yeah,
I may have asked this last week, I can't remember, pre-kindergarten education implementation committee, is committee formed by whom and serves who?
let's.
I mean, I get the concept,
Do you remember?
Is that legislative?
but I don't know.
Yeah,
Representative from that pre-kindergarten education. I'll check it best.
And how recent do you think?
we implemented it last session. And they're supposed to report, I think, in June or July.
That interesting.
So the commission shall seek input and collaborate with key stakeholders as directed by the steering. And the steering group, at minimum, the commission shall consult with Department of Mental Health, Department of Labor. I just think it should be the president of the University of Vermont. Senator Sheen.
Well, generally, speaking, I'm thinking about some language that we had in another bill. I think it was the construction bill. That was kind of a measure to ensure that the commission can also seek out consultation from anyone else that they deem necessary. But that might be covered in line 2, where it says at a minimum, the commission shall consult with X, Y, and Z. But, if this passes, this gets created, I just want to make sure that if the commission realizes, oh, we definitely have to talk to this other entity, but they don't have the discretion to do so, I just wouldn't want to, restrain them in that regard. So maybe it's already covered by at a minimum, or we could just copy and paste the language that we have in the, I think, construction.
Are there any other groups? How do people feel about not saying that the president of UVM, and I'm looking at this donate, it'd be great if this commission could not, as much as we appreciate consulting with you, it'd be great for, I think, this commission to actually have a conversation with the university president.
Agreed.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
And how do people feel again about not having the chancellor of the state colleges say, oh, you can't consult with me, you have to consult with the designee, but actually have her be consultants? Sorry, Brandon. Any other group on here? Does anybody want any other group?
I would just say to Senator Sheen's point that when this issue came up last week or so, the at a minimum was sufficient to add additional. So it doesn't, I don't think it boxes in anybody, it limits any, creates boundaries. That works for me, because we could create enormous list.
Yeah.
If that was our charge.
Yes, sir.
so is BOCES gonna be part of this conversation?
Well, I'm sure it will be. The fact that it's likely sort of happening some way simultaneously as this, yeah. Anybody else that we should consult with? Anything about Just thinking out about my outcomes and opportunities. Okay, the commission shall also review and take into consideration existing educational laws and policies, including legislative reports and commissions deemed relevant to its work. At a minimum, 2015 acts and resolves, number 46, 2018 acts and resolves, Act 173, Act 127, and Act 76. So Act 46, Act 173, Act 127, Act 76 will all be taken into consideration. Is there anything else that somebody wants to have taken into consideration?
All right, Wilson.
Whatever that is.
I think that would be covered under, like, considering if BOCES passes under existing educational laws and policy. I think that would be covered.
Duties of the commission. The commission shall study Vermont's public education system and make recommendations to ensure all students are afforded quality educational opportunities in an efficient, sustainable, equitable education system that will enable students to achieve the highest academic outcomes. The result of the commission's work shall be a recommendation for a statewide vision for Vermont's public education system with recommendations for the policy changes necessary to make Vermont's educational vision a reality. Creating and making its recommendations, the commission shall. So let's just leave it there for now. Everybody good with all that wording?
Yeah, I'm a little,
Good stuff, yeah.
it's kind of fluffy language, but I want to focus in on the equitable education system
Right.
as a goal. Not really sure, that means different things to different people. So for example, if we've got supervisory union in a school that can't pass a budget, and they're like the 5th or 6th lowest per student costs in the state, and they can't pass their budget, so they keep paring down the budget, they keep reducing it and reducing it until hopefully at some point, but then they get into, you know, like they're the lowest or the second lowest in the state, the spending per child. I'm not sure that's an equitable education system, and the phrase, the 3 letters, the 3 words can be interpreted so radically different. And I'm not quite sure if we took a poll that we would agree on what that really means.
Yeah, Senator Gillick.
I don't disagree with my colleague. I'm looking at the language that says, make recommendations. So study and make recommendations to ensure. So in that language, there's almost an understanding that, yeah, it's not equitable and we're gonna look at it and make recommendations on how to get there. So that's the way I read it.
Yeah,
I'd
Senator.
like to add one more word, affordability is a big issue.
Or sustainable maybe?
Yeah, because we can sustain it, as long as we can raise taxes. We can sustain anything, we don't have a money problem, we have a spending problem. So. And proof important is school board that can't pass its budget, you know. Like I said, I think this process may work that out, because if we have all these other districts involved in this, they're gonna see the haves and have-nots, but it's really gonna surface, so.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, my understanding is there are a lot of states where you don't vote on your budget locally, like, you just don't. And I don't know much about that, but I know I've heard it, so hopefully all those conversations you see on the table. You know, do we even wanna vote on local budgets, locally? I don't know, I don't know the answer, but I'm hoping all that stuff is gonna be on the table.
There's an article in the Vermont Daily Chronicle today about that very issue. Somebody from our school district reached out with an article and they talk about that. They don't wanna give up on local control to the government.
I'm noting affordability here,
Okay.
top to Beth, so
Yep.
don't lose it. So then, in creating and making its recommendations, the commission shall engage in the following. engagement, what we talked about, the commission shall conduct no fewer than, and we will say 14, and we'll talk about one in every county. Beth is gonna look at that. The commission shall publish a draft of its final recommendations on or before October 1, 2025. Solicit public feedback and incorporate such feedback into its final recommendations. So I think for me, I would just like to clarify, and maybe when Peter's here, you talk to him about what does this public feedback look like? So for example, they are, once the draft is finished and final recommendations, then how are people are gonna go forward and solicit public feedback? So what is that? I think we just need to make sure that's, depending on what committee wants, is it one meeting in Montpelier, is it something over Zoom? How do we want to engage people then? And then when submitting its final, so I'll note that when submitting its final recommendation to the General Assembly, the commission shall include all public feedback received as an addendum to its final report. The public feedback shall include a minimum 30-day public comment period during which the commission shall accept written comments from the public, and stakeholders. Public outreach plan to maximize public engagement and includes notice of availability of language assistance services when requested. Policy considerations in developing its recommendations. The commission shall consider and prioritize the following topics: governance, resources, and administration. Commission shall study and make recommendations regarding education governance at the state level, including the role of the agency of education in the provision of services in support of the education system. Recommendations under this subdivision shall include, at minimum, whether changes need to be made to the structure of the agency of education, including whether it better serves the recommended education vision of the state as an agency or department. What are the staffing needs of the agency of education? Whether changes need to be made to the composition, role, and function of the State Board of Education to better serve the recommended education vision of the state. What roles, functions, or decisions should be a function of local control, and what roles, functions, or decisions should be the function of control of the state level. 5, the effective integration of career and technical education in the recommendation education vision of the state. So stopping at the top of page 7. Asks a lot of different things there. It's all the questions on the table. Concerns, questions? Okay. We have roughly, so we have 4 more pages to go, which will be tomorrow. Stop now at the top of page 7. We'll have Miss St. James back in tomorrow. We'll have Peter Conlon in, and we'll work through the last 4 pages. We'll go back and look at this, and then once the yield bill is done, we will see the entire yield bill in this committee, since there are, at least I've asked to, I believe Ms. St. James said there are 6 points in the yield bill that have to do with education policy. Mr. Fisher, before we wrap, anything from the agency on any of these topics?
For the record, Ted Fisher, Vermont Agency of Education, and the agency's Director of Policy, Strategy, and Outreach. I'll just note something in answer to Senator Hewlett's question a second ago about whether budgets are voted on or not. Your colleagues in Ways and Means discussed sort of the concept of that I think that they struggle with, and I think you guys on your side struggle with as well, which is that there's really no way to forecast. Voters go to the polls with an estimated number, but the actual tax rate and spending is only set when you set the yield. after the voting. And so they had come up with a very interesting construct, which ultimately didn't make it in the final version of the bill, but can be found on their website, and I'd be happy to share if who's interested. It essentially changes, still using the same pupil weighting structure that we have to make sure we're accurately accounting, or as accurately as possible, accounting for the cost of students. Essentially, would say the legislature would say, this is what we think education is going to cost. And that would be a statewide process that would be set. And I think the devil was in those details, not some of the things they were grappling with. But what it led to is that instead of the concept of voters voting on education spending, voters would vote on the concept of excess spending. So if your district needs to or would like to, for some reason, spend additional money above and beyond the statewide education payment, then that goes in front of the voters. But if you use essentially the block grant that you receive from the state, calculated based on the pupil weighting factors system and the concept of equalized pupils, then you wouldn't necessarily warrant a budget vote. Big change, lots of devil in the details. I think they decided it was too much for them to deal with this session. But it is just, I was prompted to remember that since I spent a lot of quality time with them over the past few weeks as they developed the yield bill. And going to your colleagues in Senate Finance, I thought don't like to usually talk about what the other body is doing, but it seemed relevant to your deliberations today.
Okay. We'll leave it there for today, and we'll figure it out. Yes.
What's happening with the PCD bill? I was just wondering, because we're down to.
Probably sorry, Thursday or Friday, but let's say that, yeah. Yeah.
Yes, Eric. The PCBs were letting us at the Monsanto, State versus Monsanto hearing. It's on Monday, or yes, yesterday, yeah, it was, yeah. Within this time.
Here.
Chittenden Superior Court.
So they sent somebody.
Yeah, they sent, Monsanto sent,
We can go off more anyway.